Single dad was paid to ruin a blind date with a dwarf girl, but her reaction changed everything. This is the story of how the worst decision of his life became the beginning of something he never saw coming. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The restaurant was called Amelia's, the kind of place where soft jazz played in the background and the wine list had no prices. Cormac Henley felt like an imposter the moment he stepped through the heavy wooden door, his one good blue shirt suddenly feeling cheap onto the warm amber lighting. His hands were sweating. The hostess led him through the dining room, past couples leaning close over candlelight, past businessmen nursing scotch and closing deals, toward a corner table where a woman sat alone. Cara Collins. She was striking in person than in the photo Bryce had shown him. Platinum blonde hair framed her face in soft waves, and she wore a deep red dress that made her look stunning. She sat in a chair with a custom cushion, her phone in her hands, and for just a second before she looked up, Cormac saw something vulnerable in her expression. Hope, maybe, or anticipation. Then she saw him.
The transformation was immediate. Her expression shifted from expectation to confusion, confusion to recognition, and recognition to something cold and sharp that made Cormac's stomach drop. "You're not Vance," she said flatly. Cormac froze halfway to the table. "No, I'm not." She set her phone down with deliberate precision. "I've seen his picture. His sister showed me. So what is this?" "I can explain." "Can you?" Her voice rose just enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. "Because from where I'm sitting, this looks like some kind of joke. Did Vance send you here to make fun of the dwarf girl who actually thought someone wanted to have dinner with her?" The word hit like a slap. Not because it was cruel, she'd said it matter-of-factly, reclaiming it, but because of the resignation behind it. Like this wasn't the first time, like she'd learned to expect this. "It's not like that," Cormac said, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew how hollow they sounded. "Then what is it like?" She tilted her head, and there was something fierce in her eyes now, something that refused to look away. "Enlighten me. What's the punchline?" Cormac sank into the chair across from her because his legs suddenly didn't want to hold him anymore. The smart thing would have been to lie, to make up some story about a mix-up, a misunderstanding, anything that would let him salvage this and collect the money Bryce had promised. But looking at her, at the dignified fury in her expression, at the way her hands were clenched in her lap like she was physically holding herself together, he couldn't do it. "There's no punchline," he said quietly. "Then what are you doing here?" The question hung in the air between them.
Cormac took a breath. "I was paid to come here. $600. Vance didn't want to go on this date, so he paid me to show up instead. The plan was to be so boring or awkward that you'd never want to be set up again." The silence that followed was deafening. Cara stared at him like she was trying to decide if he was real. "You were paid," she repeated slowly, "to sabotage my date." "Yes." $600. "Yes." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Well, at least you're honest about being horrible." "I never planned to mock you," Cormac said quickly. "I never planned to be cruel. I was just supposed to be forgettable." "Oh, well, that makes it so much better." Her eyes were bright now, but she refused to let the tears fall. "Do you know what it's like to spend your entire life having to prove you're worthy of basic human decency? To have people look at you and see a punchline before they see a person?" "No," Cormac admitted. "I don't. I've heard every joke, every comment. I've been stood up, catfished, had men take bets on who could get me to go home with them." Her voice cracked just slightly. "I stopped dating 2 years ago because I got tired of finding out that every single person was either fetishizing me or humoring me or setting me up for some elaborate joke." Cormac felt something cold settle in his chest. "Cara, and tonight, I actually thought maybe this time would be different. Vance's sister seemed genuine. She talked about him like he was a good person, like maybe he wouldn't see me as a novelty or a charity case. She grabbed her purse, pulling out her wallet. So congratulations. You earned your $600.
I don't want the money. Sure you don't. She stood up, pulling on her bag with sharp, angry movements. Let me guess. You're going to tell me you have some sad story that's supposed to make me feel sorry for you? Some reason that makes this okay? Cormac stood too. I have a daughter, 7 years old. Her mother passed away 3 years ago from a rare autoimmune disease that bankrupted us. I have $47 in my checking account. The electricity is about to get shut off. My daughter needs new shoes because her toes are pushing through the front of the ones she has. $600 was the difference between making rent and not making rent. He wasn't trying to make excuses. He was just answering her question. Cara stopped moving. For a long moment, she just looked at him. So I'm supposed to feel sorry for you? She finally said, because you have a sad story? No, said Cormac, you're not supposed to feel anything. I'm just telling you the truth, because after lying to you by showing up here, it's the least you deserve. She studied his face like she was trying to read something written in a language she didn't quite speak. You know what the worst part is? I didn't create myself. I didn't choose to be born with achondroplasia, but I've spent my entire life having to prove that I'm worthy of basic respect over and over again to people who look at me and decide I'm less than human. You're not less than anything, said Cormac. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't try to make yourself feel better by saying things you think I want to hear. I'm not. I need to leave. I need to not be here. Cara, I'm sorry. She looked at him one more time, and her expression was impossible to read. Anger, yes. Hurt, absolutely. But something else, too. Something that looked almost like disappointment. If fate decides we should cross paths again, she said quietly, maybe we'll talk then. But right now, I need to go. She walked out with her head held high, weaving between tables with the kind of practiced grace that came from a lifetime of navigating a world built for people twice her size. Cormac stood there, surrounded by soft jazz and expensive wine and people who belonged in places like this, and felt the weight of what he'd done settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. The waiter approached cautiously. Sir, would you like to order? No, Cormac said. I'm leaving. He walked out into the March night, where the wind cut through his good shirt and made his eyes water. Or maybe that wasn't the wind at all. The next morning, Cormac drove to Bryce Keller's office in downtown Wilmington. Bryce worked out of a renovated brick building that probably cost more per square foot than Cormac made in a year. The receptionist looked at him like he'd tracked mud across her clean floor, but she buzzed him through when he said Bryce was expecting him. Mac, Bryce looked up from his computer, grinning. How'd it go? Did she buy the act? Cormac set $600 in cash on the desk. Bryce's grin faded. What's this? The deal's off. What are you talking about? You already went on the date. She knew I wasn't Vance the second she saw me, Cormac said. She's not stupid, and I'm not doing this. You already did it, Mac. The money's yours. I don't want it. Cormac turned to leave. You're really going to walk away from $600 over some girl you don't even know? Cormac paused at the door. Yeah, I am. He left Bryce sitting there, staring at the cash like it might explain what had just happened. Outside, the morning was bright and cold. Cormac sat in his car for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, trying to figure out why returning the money didn't make him feel any better. His phone buzzed. A text from his landlord. Rent is due in 3 days. Don't make me come looking for it. Cormac closed his eyes and tried to remember how to breathe. 5 days later, Cormac was at the Wilmington Public Library with Poppy. It was their Saturday morning ritual, the one constant in a life that felt like it was held together with duct tape and prayer. The library was Poppy's favorite place in the world. She loved the way it smelled like old paper and possibility, loved the children's section with its rainbow carpet and beanbag chairs shaped like animals. Most of all, she loved that it was free. Daddy, did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts? Poppy announced, looking up from a book about ocean animals. That's so many hearts! Maybe they have a lot of love to give, Cormac said. Poppy considered this, her face scrunching up in concentration. Or maybe they get really sad sometimes and need extra hearts in case one breaks. Before Cormac could figure out how to respond to that, she'd already moved on. I'm going to look at the horse books. There's one about a horse on a beach, and I need to see if she's okay because last time there was a storm coming. She took off toward the stacks, her too long hair escaping from her ponytail, sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Cormac watched her go, this fierce little person who'd somehow kept him standing when everything else had fallen apart. She had Celia's eyes, his late wife's eyes, that same way of looking at the world like it was full of magic even when it had given them every reason to stop believing. He wandered toward the new releases section, not really looking for anything in particular, just killing time until Poppy needed him to explain something or help her reach a book on a high shelf, or he saw her. Cara Collins was standing near the fiction section, wearing jeans and cream sweater. She had a book in her hands, something with a blue cover, and she was so absorbed in reading the back that she hadn't noticed him yet. Cormac's first instinct was to leave, to grab Poppy and get out before Cara saw him, before he had to see that look on her face again, the one that said he'd disappointed her in ways he couldn't quite name. But he'd already been a coward once. Cara. She looked up, and the walls went back up immediately. You. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. Cormac kept his distance, giving her space. My daughter and I come here every Saturday, but I couldn't let the moment pass without trying again to apologize. You already apologized. Her voice was carefully neutral. I know, but you didn't have space to hear it properly. He took a breath. What I did was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I agreed to it. You didn't deserve to be part of that scheme. You didn't deserve any of it. Cara studied him for a long moment. Why did you give the money back? How did you know I gave it back? I didn't. The ghost of a smile crossed her face. I was testing a theory. Before Cormac could figure out what that meant, a small voice called out from somewhere in the stacks. Daddy, the horse is okay. The storm missed her beach and she... Poppy came careening around the corner, holding a book triumphantly over her head like a trophy. She skidded to a stop when she saw Cara, her eyes going wide. Oh, hello. Hello, Cara said, and something in her expression softened. Poppy tilted her head, studying Cara with the kind of unself-conscious curiosity that only children could manage. You're really little, like me. Well, not like me because I'm little, because I'm 7, but you're little like a grown-up who's little. Poppy, Cormac started, mortified, but Poppy was already moving closer, her face lighting up with an idea. Are you a fairy? Because in my books, fairies are little and they have magic, and you look like you could have magic.
Cara laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. I'm not a fairy, unfortunately. I'm just a person who didn't grow as tall as most people. Oh, Poppy nodded seriously, like this made perfect sense. My daddy's body works differently too sometimes. He gets really tired because he works at nighttime, and his back hurts a lot. And one time he cried in the kitchen when he thought I wasn't looking, but I was looking because I needed water. Poppy, Cormac's voice cracked. What? You always say I should tell the truth. She looked between them, confused by the tension she could feel, but didn't understand. Cara was looking at Cormac differently now, not with anger exactly, something closer to recognition. What's your name? She asked Poppy. Poppy May Henley. What's yours? Cara? That's a pretty name, Poppy smiled, revealing the gap where she'd lost a tooth the week before. It sounds fancy, like a princess or something. Thank you. Cara crouched down to Poppy's level, which brought them almost eye to eye. What book did you find? It's about Seashell. She's a horse who lives on a beach, and there was going to be a big storm, but it missed her, and now she's okay. Poppy held up the book. Do you want to see? There's pictures and everything. I'd love to see. And just like that, Poppy grabbed Cara's hand and pulled her toward the children's section, chattering the entire way about horses and beaches and storms, and how sometimes things work out even when you think they won't. Cormac followed at a distance, watching his daughter, who'd been wary of strangers since Celia died, warm up to Cara like they'd known each other forever.
In the children's section, Poppy showed Cara every book she'd picked out. She explained in great detail why the octopus book was important, why the dragon book was funny, why the one about the girl who talked to trees made her cry in a good way. Cara listened to all of it, asking questions, making observations, treating Poppy's enthusiasm like it mattered. Finally, Poppy crashed in a beanbag chair shaped like a frog, the horse book open on her lap, her eyes already starting to droop. Cara stood up, and Cormac walked over. "She really likes you," he said quietly. "She's wonderful." Cara's voice was soft. "Honest in a way most adults forget how to be. That's Poppy. She doesn't know how to be anything else." They stood there in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Poppy fight sleep and lose. "I come here most Saturdays," Cara said, not quite looking at him, "for a book club. We meet at 10:30. We're usually here by 9, Cormac said. "So if we happen to run into each other again," she trailed off. "I wouldn't be opposed to that," Cormac finished. She looked at him then, really looked at him. "I don't forgive you, not yet, but I'm not saying never either." "That's more than I deserve." "Probably," but she was almost smiling. "See you next Saturday, maybe." "Maybe," Cormac agreed. She left, and Cormac sat down next to Poppy's beanbag chair, his mind spinning. "Daddy?" Poppy's sleepy voice drifted up. "Yeah, sweetheart?" "Miss Cara is nice. I like her." "Me too, Poppy. Me too." The next Saturday, they ran into each other again. Poppy spotted Cara first, letting out a delighted squeal that made several people turn and glare. "Miss Cara! Miss Cara! You came back!" "I told you I would be here," Cara said, laughing as Poppy barreled into her for a hug. It became a pattern. 3 Saturdays turned into 4, 4 into 8. Poppy would commandeer Cara for the first hour, showing her books and convincing her to participate in elaborate make-believe games that involved being dragons or pirates or scientists, discovering new planets. Then Poppy would inevitably crash in a beanbag chair, worn out from her own enthusiasm, and the adults would talk. Slowly, carefully, like people learning to trust something fragile, they told each other their stories. Cara told him about growing up different, about being the only kid in her elementary school with achondroplasia, about the stares and the questions and the kids who'd made her the punchline of jokes she didn't understand until she was older. "My parents tried," she said one Saturday in May, when the weather had finally warmed enough that they could sit outside on the library's patio. "They loved me, but they didn't always know how to protect me from a world that saw me as less than." She told him about college, full academic scholarship to Georgetown, about finding her footing in nonprofit work, about learning to advocate for herself and others. And she told him about dating, about men who'd fetishized her height, who'd been embarrassed to be seen with her in public, who'd revealed their true colors in 1,000 small cruelties. "I stopped trying 2 years ago," she said. "It seemed easier to be alone than to keep hoping for something different." In return, Cormac told her about Celia. He told her about falling in love at 23, about a woman who laughed too loud at movies and cried at commercials and made the best chocolate chip cookies he'd ever tasted. He told her about the headaches that started when Poppy was 3, about the diagnosis that came like a sledgehammer, progressive, unpredictable, expensive, about watching his wife's body betray her, watching her fight with everything she had, watching her lose anyway. "She died on a Sunday morning," he said, and his voice only shook a little. "Spring. The window was open, and there were birds in the apple tree she'd planted. Poppy was at my parents' house. I was holding Celia's hand, and I felt the exact moment she left." Cara reached over and took his hand. She didn't say anything. There was nothing to say, but the contact was enough. "The medical bills destroyed us," Cormac continued. "I thought I was prepared, thought I'd done everything right, but it wasn't enough. We lost the house. I lost my job. Ended up in a 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat with a 4-year-old who kept asking when Mommy was coming home." "How did you tell her?" Cara asked quietly. "I said that Mommy's body stopped working, but that her love for Poppy would never stop, that she was watching from somewhere we couldn't see, like a star." He swallowed hard. "Poppy asked if Mommy could still see her dreams. I said yes. I don't know if that's true, but I said yes." They sat in silence for a while, both of them carrying the weight of their histories. "Poppy saved me," Cormac finally said. After Celia died, there were days I wanted to give up. But every morning, this little person needed me, needed breakfast and clean clothes and help tying her shoes. She needed me to be okay, so I learned how to be okay, even when I wasn't. Children keep us anchored, Cara said softly. They need us so completely that we don't have the luxury of drowning. In June, Cara invited them to her apartment to meet Biscuit, her orange tabby cat. The apartment was in a renovated building near downtown, with high ceilings and big windows that let in floods of natural light. Cara had adapted the space thoughtfully. Lower countertops in the kitchen, custom furniture, everything arranged for maximum accessibility without sacrificing style. "This place is amazing," Cormac said, looking around. "I designed most of it myself," Cara admitted. "It took a while to find an architect who understood that accessible doesn't have to mean medical or institutional." Poppy was already on the floor, having been adopted by Biscuit, who decided she was acceptable and was now purring like a small engine on her lap. "He likes you," Cara said. "I think he's magic," Poppy whispered, petting Biscuit with the kind of reverence usually reserved for rare artifacts. Cara had set up a scavenger hunt around the apartment for Poppy, little clues that led to small prizes and eventually to a plate of homemade chocolate chip cookies. "You didn't have to do all this," Cormac said, watching Poppy race around with an enthusiasm that made his heart hurt in the best way. "I wanted to," Cara said simply. They had dinner, pasta that Cara made from scratch, while Poppy helped by stirring and taste testing and providing running commentary on everything. Afterward, they watched a movie, and somewhere in the middle, Poppy fell asleep on the couch with Biscuit curled up on her chest. Cormac and Cara sat in the kitchen, drinking tea, the comfortable silence of people who'd learned they didn't need to fill every quiet moment. "I need to tell you something," Cara said suddenly. Cormac looked up. "My last name isn't Collins. Well, it is legally. I changed it. But I was born Cara Hayes." She took a breath. "My father is Lawson Hayes." The name landed like a stone. Lawson Hayes, founder of Redwood Logistics, worth billions, the kind of person whose name showed up in Forbes and Wall Street Journal headlines. "You're an heiress," Cormac said slowly. "Technically," Cara's hands tightened around her mug. "Do you know what it's like to have real money when you look like me? Every person I've dated, every friend I've made, I've wondered, do they actually care about me or do they see dollar signs?" She explained that she'd changed her name at 23, moved away from the family estate, lived like a normal person. "I have a trust fund that I don't touch except for emergencies. I work because I want to work. I live in this apartment because I chose it, not because it was bought for me." "Why are you telling me this?" Cormac asked. "Because I like you." She said it matter-of-factly, like stating a truth that couldn't be avoided. "And I like Poppy. And with you, for the first time in years, I got to be just Cara. Not an heiress, not a Hayes, not someone with a checkbook attached to my identity. I wasn't ready to give that up." "You don't have to give anything up," Cormac said. "Really?" There was something vulnerable in her eyes. "Because most people, when they find out about the money—" "I don't care about your father's money." Cormac leaned forward. "I care about the woman who spent 3 hours helping my daughter understand why owls can turn their heads almost all the way around. I care about the person who remembered that Poppy's favorite color is purple and bought purple napkins for tonight. I care about Cara, not the Hayes fortune." "How do you know you mean that?" "You don't," Cormac admitted, "but I'm not going anywhere. Your secret is safe with me, and if it takes time for you to believe that, I'll wait." Cara's eyes were bright. "Okay. Okay? Okay." She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Thank you." From the couch, Poppy mumbled something in her sleep that sounded suspiciously like "Daddy likes Miss Cara," and they both laughed quietly, not wanting to wake her. Summer passed in a blur of library Saturdays and weeknight dinners and Poppy's endless questions about everything. In the months that followed, Cara used her connections to help Cormac find a new job. She was subtle about it, just mentioned that a friend who ran a construction company was looking for someone with project management experience. Would Cormac be interested in an introduction?
The interview went well. The pay was significantly better than driving a delivery truck. Regular hours, benefits, room for advancement.
I don't know how to thank you, Cormac said when he got the offer. You don't have to thank me, Cara said. I just made an introduction. You got the job because you're good at what you do. For the first time in 3 years, Cormac could breathe without feeling like he was drowning. He moved Poppy into a 2-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood, bought her new shoes that actually fit, enrolled her in an after-school program she'd been begging to join. "Daddy, are we rich now?" Poppy asked one evening, looking around their new living room with wide eyes. "No, sweetheart, but we're okay, and that's pretty good." "Being okay is very good," Poppy agreed seriously. Then, with the lightning-fast subject changes of childhood, "I think Miss Cara likes you. Likes you. "What makes you say that?" "Because she gets all pink when you say nice things, and she laughs at your jokes even when they're not that funny. And yesterday, when you weren't looking, she was looking at you like how the princess looks at the prince in my books." "You're very observant." "I know," Poppy grinned. "So do you like her too? Like her? Cormac thought about Cara's laugh, the way she listened like every word mattered, how she'd shown up at his apartment when Poppy had the flu, armed with soup and ginger ale and an offer to help, the way his chest felt too small when she smiled at him. "Yeah, I do." "Then you should tell her." Poppy said this like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "It's more complicated than that, sweetheart." "Why?"
And there it was, the question that had no good answer. Why was it complicated? Because he was scared. Because the last time he'd loved someone, he'd lost her, and the grief had nearly killed him. Because Cara deserved better than a man who still sometimes woke up reaching for a wife who wasn't there anymore. Because grown-up feelings are messy, he finally said. "Feelings are always messy," Poppy said wisely. "That's why they're feelings." Fall came early that year, painting the trees in shades of gold and crimson. Poppy started 2nd grade wearing new shoes and a backpack that wasn't held together with duct tape. She made friends, joined the reading program, came home with stories about her day that made Cormac's heart feel too big for his chest. And every Saturday, they went to the library. It was a Saturday in late October, the kind of crisp autumn day that made everything feel sharper, clearer, when things finally shifted. Poppy had found a new series about a girl who could talk to animals and had dragged Cara off to show her every single book in the collection. Cormac watched them from across the children's section, his daughter's animated gestures and Cara's patient attention, and felt something settle in his chest. Later, after Poppy had fallen asleep in a beanbag chair with a book about wolves open on her lap, Cara and Cormac sat close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I need to tell you something," Cormac said. "I think I know," Cara said softly. "Poppy told me you practice talking to me in the mirror and that you say my name in your sleep." Cormac covered his face with his hands. "I'm going to have a serious conversation with that child about privacy." Cara laughed and gently pulled his hands away. "I practice too. I've been waiting for you to say something for about 2 months." "Really? Really?" She was looking at him with an expression that made his pulse race. "So say it." "I want—" Cormac started, then stopped. "Tried again. I very much want, if you do." "I do," Cara said. "I really, really do." He kissed her, gentle, tentative, sweet, like something precious that might break if handled too roughly. When they pulled apart, Cara was smiling. "That took you long enough." "I was trying to be respectful." "You can be respectful and still kiss me, Cormac." From across the room, a stage whisper. "I knew it! Daddy and Miss Cara are in love!" Poppy came charging over, apparently not as asleep as they'd thought, flinging herself at both of them with enough force to nearly knock them off. "Does this mean Miss Cara is going to be my new mommy?" she asked, her face so hopeful it hurt to look at. "Let's take it one step at a time, sweetheart," Cormac said, but he was looking at Cara, who was looking back with an expression that made him think maybe, possibly, someday wasn't as far away as he'd thought. 2 weeks later, Cara invited Cormac to meet her father.
You don't have to, she said quickly. I know it's a lot. Lawson Hayes is a lot. But he wants to meet you, and I think you should know what you're getting into if we're doing this. We're doing this, Cormac confirmed. Yeah? Yeah. They drove to the Hayes estate on a Saturday afternoon. Poppy was at a birthday party, giving them a few hours alone. The house was exactly what Cormac expected, sprawling, intimidating, the kind of place that had a name instead of just an address. But Lawson Hayes himself was a surprise.
He was in his late 60s, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, and he met them at the door himself instead of having staff do it. "You must be Cormac," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about you." "All good things, I hope." "My daughter doesn't waste time on bad things." Lawson smiled at Cara with obvious affection. "Come in. I promise I'm less intimidating than the house suggests." Over lunch, which Lawson had apparently cooked himself, a detail that surprised Cormac, they talked about Redwood logistics, about Cormac's new job, about Poppy and her latest obsession with wolves. "Cara tells me you're a single father. That can't be easy." "It's the hardest thing I've ever done," Cormac admitted, "but also the most important." Lawson nodded approvingly. "My daughter is important to me. The most important thing, actually. So I need to know that you understand what you're getting into." "Dad?" Cara started. "No, it's okay," Cormac said. He looked at Lawson directly. "I'm not after your money. I'm not trying to use Cara for connections or social climbing or anything else. I'm a construction project manager who drives a 10-year-old Honda and lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. But I care about your daughter a lot, and I'm willing to earn your trust over time if that's what it takes." The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Lawson smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Good answer. Cara said you were honest. I appreciate that." The rest of lunch was easier. Lawson told stories about Cara as a child, about her fierce intelligence and stubborn independence. Cara rolled her eyes but didn't correct him, which meant the stories were true. As they were leaving, Lawson pulled Cormac aside. "Take care of her," he said quietly. "She's tougher than she looks, but she's also been hurt more than most people realize. Don't add to that." "I won't," Cormac promised. In the car on the way home, Cara was quiet. "That went well, I think," Cormac ventured. "He likes you," she sounded surprised. "Is that bad?" "No, it's just he doesn't like anyone. He's suspicious of everyone who gets close to me, and for good reason." She reached over and took his hand. "But he likes you, which means you must be doing something right." "I'm just being myself." "I know." She squeezed his hand. "That's what I love about you." The word hung in the air between them. "Love?" Cormac repeated softly. Cara's eyes widened. I did mean it, but I didn't mean to say it yet." "I love you too," Cormac said. She stared at him. "Really?" "Really. I have for a while now. I just didn't know if it was too soon or if you'd want to hear it or—" She kissed him right there in the car in her father's driveway, and it felt like coming home. Winter arrived with the first snow in early December. Cormac's life looked completely different than it had 9 months ago. Better job, stable housing, a daughter who was thriving, and Cara, brilliant, fierce, wonderful Cara, who'd somehow seen past his worst moment to the person he was trying to be. They'd talked about the future in quiet moments, when Poppy was asleep and the world felt like it belonged to just the two of them. About what forever might look like, about building something that honored the past without being trapped by it. On a Saturday morning in February, exactly 1 year after that disastrous date at Amelia's, Cormac took Cara back to the library where everything had changed. Poppy was with Cormac's parents for the weekend, which meant they had the rare luxury of time alone. "Why are we here?" Cara asked, laughing as he led her to the children's section. "Because this is where you gave me a second chance. This is where Poppy asked if you were a fairy. This is where I started believing that maybe I deserved something good after all." He knelt down in front of her, right there between the beanbag chairs and the rainbow carpet, and pulled out a small velvet box. "Cara Collins. Cara Hayes, whatever name you want to use." His voice shook. "Will you marry me?" She was crying before he finished the question. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." The ring was simple,
a single diamond on a silver band. But when he slipped it on her finger, it felt like a promise that went deeper than jewelry. "Poppy's gonna lose her mind," Cara said, laughing through tears.
"She helped me pick out the ring," Cormac admitted. "She said it needed to be sparkly but not too sparkly because you're fancy but not fancy. That child is terrifyingly perceptive." "I know." He stood up, pulling her close. "So, when do you want to do this?" "Soon," Cara said. "I don't want to wait." They got married on a Saturday in late March, exactly 1 year and 1 month after Cormac had walked into Amelia's carrying shame and desperation. It was a small ceremony in the botanical garden downtown, where early spring flowers were just starting to bloom, and the air smelled like earth and possibility. Cara wore a cream-colored dress that made her look like she'd stepped out of a dream. Her father walked her down the aisle, his eyes suspiciously bright, and when he placed her hand in Cormac's, he whispered something that made her laugh. Poppy was the flower girl, wearing a purple dress she'd insisted on picking out herself. She took her job very seriously, scattering rose petals with the kind of focus usually reserved for important scientific experiments. The guest list was small: Cormac's parents, a handful of close friends, Cara's father and stepmother, colleagues from her nonprofit, people who mattered, people who'd walked with them through the hard parts. The officiant was a woman Cara worked with, someone who'd known her for years and understood what this moment meant. "Love," she said, looking at Cormac and Cara, "isn't always the fairy tale we imagine. Sometimes it's messy and complicated and born from our most broken moments. But that doesn't make it less real. If anything, it makes it more precious." Cormac's vows were simple. "Cara, a year ago, I was a man who'd forgotten how to hope, who'd accepted that survival was the best I could expect. And then you met me, and you had every reason to write me off, to protect yourself from someone who'd proven he could make terrible choices. But you didn't. You gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. You saw past my worst moment to the person I was trying to become. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. I promise to show up, to choose you, to build a life with you that honors both our histories without being defined by them. I promise to love Poppy with you, to raise her to be as brave and honest and kind as you are. And I promise that every single day I will be grateful that fate decided to give us another chance." Cara's vows made everyone cry. "Cormac, when I met you, I'd built walls so high I'd forgotten what it felt like to be vulnerable. I decided that being alone was safer than risking disappointment again. And then there you were, honest about your mistakes, willing to face consequences, showing up even when it was hard. You taught me that second chances aren't about erasing the past. They're about choosing to write a different future. You and Poppy gave me something I'd stopped believing in, a family built on honesty and laughter and showing up for each other even when it's messy. I promise to love you through the hard days and the good ones. I promise to be patient when Poppy asks me for the 1,000th time if Biscuit can really talk to her telepathically. I promise to remember that we're all just doing our best, and that grace and forgiveness are the foundations of real love. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for choosing me." When they kissed, Poppy cheered so loudly that everyone laughed. The reception was in a small restaurant nearby. Good food, better company, the kind of celebration that felt warm and genuine. Lawson Hayes gave a toast that acknowledged the unconventional beginning of their relationship without dwelling on it.
If this story touched your heart, don't leave silently. Subscribe to Souls Connecting Tales and stay with us for more moments that remind us what it means to be human. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Your words might comfort someone who needs them more than you know. And if you felt even a spark of hope today, give this video a like, because sometimes a small act of support can change everything.